Good to see you. How many of you took a nap? I took a nap. Man, my Everly was in our bed today doing quiet time because she's kind of growing out of naps and sort of. She grows out of naps until she falls apart because she doesn't have a nap. One of those things. And so I went to bed and she was sitting next to me. She said, "Daddy, why do you nap?" And I was like, "You'll get it one day." Right now, you can't wait to not have a nap, and one day you'll not be able to wait to have a nap, right? It's the circle of life. But good to see everybody. I hope you have your thinking caps on. This is good stuff. Tonight's where we get into some real apologetics. The last few weeks have been like, here's the terms you need to know. We're just going to kind of scratch the surface a little bit. Tonight's some real good, ancient. Not ancient. I mean, there's some really old stuff. Yeah, some of it is ancient. Some really old stuff as we get into the study tonight. All right. Well, if you were not here this week, Heidi got back, or you weren't here last week. Heidi got back from vacation. She went to see her new grandbaby. So we're gonna bug her together. If you were not here last week, text her or email her. Don't text or email me. Text her or email her about notes, okay? Because she has the completed note packet, not my notes. Just the line, like just the filled out outline. And she will send that to you, okay, so you can get caught up. And if you were not here last week and didn't get your book, we'll make sure you get your book as well. I believe the rest of those are in the office as well. So, if you really just want to annoy her, you can text her or email her anyway and say, Pastor Kyle said to annoy you, so here I am annoying you. All right, well, let's pray and we'll get started. Father, we thank you so much for your grace and your goodness towards us. We are truly in awe of you, and we should be. And if we're not in awe of you, would you show us our pride, because we should be astounded at you. And that truth, that idea of your awesome nature, not only should cause our being astounded at you, but should increase our affection for you. So Lord, we ask that tonight you would even just further impress us with who you are. We ask that you would give us an effective and productive time together tonight. And we ask these things through Christ. Amen. All right. How many of you like watches? People don't really wear watches much anymore. How many of you like watches? Okay. How many of you have maybe they have an old antique clock that was like an heirloom in your family or something? Okay. How many of you have like a big grandfather clock that was maybe an heirloom in your house? How many of you are like, I have the cheap $5 alarm clock from Walmart, and it goes meh, meh, meh in the morning, and it drives me nuts? Yeah. How many of you think clocks are archaic, so you just use your phone? All right, some of you raise your hand. Don't. Okay. All right. Well, I'm a watch guy. I love watches. I went through this time where I quit wearing watches because I got an Apple Watch. My wife's family all got together and got me an Apple Watch, and I did that for a while. And I'm very thankful for the gift, in case they're watching. I don't know why they would be. But I eventually kind of quit wearing it because it was just another electronic thing I was plugged into, and I didn't like it. And I found myself, once I was in a counseling session, and my watch vibrated because I got a text message, and I looked at it. And then I immediately thought, oh, they think I'm being really rude. Because it was really rude. They thought, oh, I'm just checking the time. And so I didn't like the feeling of literally being plugged in on my body. Like my phone, I can detach from myself. And so I quit wearing the Apple Watch, and I got back into wearing watches. Anyway, no matter where you are on the watch spectrum, I mean, people can get crazy with watches. You can go to Walmart and buy a good watch for $20, and it can last you for a long time. Or, you could buy the Mickey Mouse edition luxury Rolex and spend, $80,000, $90,000 if you wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but some people do. Or you could spend more on a Rolex if you wanted to. No matter where you are on the watch spectrum, imagine with me you are taking a walk as a family, and there is a watch in the path. Maybe it's the $20 Timex, or maybe it's the $100,000 special edition Rolex. If it's that one, grab it, right? What are some things you would assume if you saw that watch in the path? What would you begin to assume? What would come into your head? Okay, the band broke. Maybe they lost it, so you check the clasp on it. Maybe it came undone and they didn't feel it. That's a real bummer if you're the Rolex guy, right? What else would you assume? Yeah, someone's like, oh man, someone's bummed out, or maybe again, if it's an expensive watch, someone's panicking. Maybe they're going to retrace their steps. Should I leave it here? Should I take it for them? You know what? I don't know what to do. Would anyone assume? So let's just, before we get to that question, everyone would assume somebody dropped it. Like, this isn't supposed to be here. How many of you would think, okay, well, the natural elements and lots of time brought together a series of intricate watch parts, and this natural process was perfect, and this natural process was perfect, and everything aligned just so that the watch formed itself over lots of time? Would anyone assume that? Yeah? No. Well, this idea, and he actually used that exact analogy, is the idea of what's called the teleological argument. Teleological argument. All right, say it with me. Ready? Teleological. Say it again. Teleological. The teleological argument. This was first originated by a man named William Paley. This is the late 1700s. William Paley, a theistic philosopher. And he used that exact analogy. If I were out in nature, and you can read his account of this, if I were out in nature and I was out for a jaunt, I think is the word he uses, because he's British and old, and those are the words they use, and I encountered upon a timepiece, right? Which that's what they used to call them. Now, if you say timepiece, people just assume you're pretentious, right? I don't wear watches; I wear timepieces, right? I happened upon a timepiece. I would think a certain thing about it, and if I were to admire its craftsmanship, because at the time watches were all made well, and whatever. Then I would be able to draw conclusions about its crafter, the person who made the watch. The teleological argument is typically referred to as the argument from design. The argument from design, implying, presupposing, so let's use terms that we laid the concrete last week with the presuppositional apologetics, presupposing a designer. No one would make up the idea that something created itself as intricate as a watch. All of the small pieces, all of the numbers in the right place, and the hands pointing the right directions, and that's just the face. If you go behind it, we've got the cogs and the wheels, and everything needs to turn the right way for it to work. And no one's going to go, oh, this is an incredible thing that developed itself. The natural idea is that someone greater than the thing itself has made it. So it's called the argument from design. Paley referred to it himself as the divine watchmaker argument. So he's going to take this basic idea that the intricacy of design can therefore apply to creation itself, therefore presupposing or affirming the idea of a divine designer, someone who has created with the ability and the wisdom to do so. And as a fine craftsman would put together a well-made watch, God, the divine designer, has perfectly and wisely crafted an intricate existence into which you and I are born and exist ourselves. From the ancient Latin words telos and logos, actually these are Greek, these aren't Latin now that I think about it. Telos is the idea of end or goal, and logos or logis is the idea of rationale or reason, or can anyone come up with an American word, English word from which we get, that sounds like logos? Logic, yes, or logistics, yes. The reason or the rationale of something. This is where we get our English word logic, okay? Telos, the end or the goal or something, and logos. So teleological maintains the idea of design, both the ends and the means of something. The end, its purpose or goal, and the means, how that thing came about. Both the ends and the means of life were strategically designed. Last week I made everybody move up. We should just, maybe you'll learn every week you're just going to sit further up. I got up there and I made the font bigger, but it's still kind of small up there, isn't it? Anyway, both the ends and means of life were strategically designed. That means not only has God superintended or designed our creation, but He's superintended our purpose in creation. We don't exist as useless masses. We don't exist in futility. We don't exist without meaning. We don't exist without purpose. And the idea of the intrinsic and tedious beauty and wisdom that God put into creation also accounts for the idea of our purpose. Both of these are accounted for in this argument. So, if we go back to one of our philosophical answers or philosophical questions, the basic questions of life, how did I get here and why am I here? Again, we're going to continually go back to how presuppositions help us answer those basic questions. How did I get here and why am I here? This argument answers both. How did I get here? Well, I was strategically, intrinsically, tediously created. And my purpose was accounted for by my Creator as well. Isaiah 43, we were created for His glory. Okay? Suggests you cannot have design without a designer. And again, so not only, the reason we used Paley's analogy is because it's original to the argument itself, and it's a good analogy. But you can do this with children, right? Everyone understands this. If I take one of my children's puzzles, the 100-piece puzzles that they're working on now or whatever, and I put them in a box, and I say, all right, kids, let's do something really neat, and I put all the pieces not assembled in the box, and I throw them up in the air, they're not expecting them to come down in order. They are not expecting the puzzle to be completed. That would blow their minds. That would blow my mind. I'd be like, wow, how did I do that? Right? Everyone would be shocked. Why? Because we understand the idea that something that is made needs a maker, especially if there's intricacy to that design. And I think anyone who's honest with themselves we talk about atheists or agnostics or whatever. Anyone who's truly honest applies this idea seemingly everywhere except to when it comes to cosmology, the philosophy of the universe and where things come from. Or they apply it to everything except the idea that maybe we were caused by a creator or designed by a creator. This is why people understand that you have to have some order to your finances. People understand that. Chaos is not going, or control of money is not going to happen by means of the money. You have to design that. You have to superintend how you're going to use your money and budget your money and plan for your money. What is it Maxwell says? A budget is, A budget is planning your money so that you're not wondering where it went, or something along those lines. Telling your money where to go so you're not wondering where it went. People understand this with their finances. People who are builders understand this. I made my son's bed that was last fall. He needed a new bed, and I hadn't made furniture. I'd made a lot of smaller wooden things and boxes, and I hadn't made any furniture. Well, I'd made some, but not anything like that. And so, and I didn't use a manual. I didn't draw up a schematic. My brain is my, So, so far it's worked out well. I did not adequately support the footboard, nor did I account for the fact that I have a 4-year-old son who would kick things. So that lasted about 2 weeks. I also used a wood that was too soft to attach the footboard to it, and it's fine now. We got it all figured out. But I now know next time I do that, some things I should have done. Why? Because I have adjusted my design in my head. Why? Because I understand the idea that if I'm going to create something, design needs to be good. This is basic to human understanding. Except for, it seems, when it comes to how people understand their origin in life. That they were either made by an all-wise creator, or that they're the result of initial chaos and millions of years of order coming together somehow. Now, okay, so let's do this. Or let's give the rest of the suggests you can't have order, you cannot have design without a designer. We talk about the idea of a fine-tuned universe. That says fine-tuned universe. That is, the cosmos, or the universe, functions exactly how it should, even down to its minutia. These are the things we don't think about every day. Like you breathe in the exact precise gaseous makeup in the air that your body needs. We don't think about that every day. We think about it in science class, or maybe you're bored of it in science class, but you realize if the gas that you consume, because we're all consuming gas right now, is just slightly off, there's absolute chaos. We've got a problem with our life. We see this in the cosmos, and I shared that analogy with you. Down to numbers with lots of zeros after them. Literally, if the Earth was like the fraction of a hair to the right or to the left, away from the sun or further from, or closer to the sun, we either burn up or we freeze. The orbits and the gravitational pulls are precise to each planet so that their asteroids don't run into us and vice versa. I mean, things like that. That's incredible. That's mind-boggling. I went to visit John Davenport a few weeks ago. Some of you may remember John. He came a long time ago. He's old, and he's in care home now. I went to visit John he's a shut-in a few weeks ago, and I asked him about his life, and he said, I had 2 hobbies. He said, I did scuba diving and astronomy. And he said, I realized those things will make you a believer if you're not. Scuba diving and astronomy. Because the more you look out there, the bigger it gets, the smaller you become, and the more astounding it is. Fine-tuned universe. Precision of biological existence. Again, things that we don't think about. For example, did you know most of your body, internally, your internal body weight, most of your internal body weight is microbial organisms? Did you know that? And what you think of when I say microbial organisms is, ooh, parasites. They're contributing to your health. One writer says that the microbial organisms in a human are like planets of which that human is the universe. Planets and stars of which that human is the universe. We have, every single one of us, millions of microbial organisms on us and in us. Now, that might freak you out a little bit, but they're contributing to your health. And actually, often, if one begins to become a parasite and fight against your health, other microbial organisms will fight that organism and protect your body. These are things we don't think about. God is not only the creator of things visible, Christ is not only the creator of things visible, he is the creator of things invisible, both spiritual and physical. Our existence is miraculous. Miraculous. I read a book recently, I think I talked about it recently, it's called The Body, in which he talks about our immune system. Do you know that every human, every day, this is not to freak you out, it's to do the opposite. Every human, every day, has at least 4 cancer cells enter their body, but their body fights it off. Statistically, a lot more people should get cancer than do. By a lot, I mean an amazing amount. Your body knows how to protect itself. Why? Because God made it a certain way. It's intricately, beautifully designed. God displays his wisdom in creation, and that includes in you. I shared a few Wednesdays ago when we were talking about creation in the Psalm about how your brain is literally almost a second and a half ahead of how fast your body works. Your brain lives in the future so that your body is not in danger. Did you know that? If you weren't here for that Wednesday, that's mind-blowing. Your brain adjusts to live in the future so that it can anticipate everything that's going to happen. Why? So that your body's safe, so that we notice the car coming in time, things like that. How do we get here? If it's accident, that's a pretty remarkable accident. And I just don't have the faith to chalk it up to being an accident. I just don't. The teleological argument. Any questions on the teleological argument? Any questions here? Okay, so let's apply some things that we've done. We said that Christianity, our worldview, answers the basic questions of life. And not only do we have a reasonable faith that makes sense, we have a reasonable faith that does provide adequate answers for meaning and for purpose. Not just the how we came about, but the why we came about. And we discussed that here within the teleological argument. It accounts for both ends and means. We were created and we were created for his glory. What do I lose? What do I lose if I'm an atheist or agnostic? And my view is that, either the aliens floated through, and again, I'm not making fun of them. Like this is a commonly believed view by really smart people. The aliens floated by our galaxy and dropped off some sort of substance, and from that substance came evolution, and then millions and millions of years, or that there was a Big Bang. The Big Bang isn't like everyone's go-to view like it was a few decades ago, although it's still believed, and that there was some sort of something that went boom, and from that chaos, order ensued. What do I lose if my view is that I believe in a fine-tuned universe, I can see the same evidence as you, and I believe in the astounding nature of biological existence? We just talked about our bodies. We didn't even talk about how plants contribute to the environment and animals contribute to environment. Like, if you take one animal out of the ecosystem, how much the ecosystem changes, things like that. If I believe all of that, what do I lose if I believe that life is a result of order that came out of chaos? So if we're Christian, this is what we believe, fine-tuned universe ends in the mean. What do I lose if I can look at the same evidence and say, well, it came from the Big Bang? How does this view help us push back on that? Okay, there's no designer in the Big Bang. So I can just ask, okay, well, how, right? Like what's behind, I mean, who started that? What started that? You have to eventually get over the astounding nature logic leap, that order came from that sort of chaos. Let me help you in how I ask the question. So I'm a Christian, and I believe that God in his design accounts for both my creation and your creation, the creation of the cosmos, and the purpose, the how and the why. I'm an atheist or agnostic. I look at the same evidence, and I think it came from the Big Bang. What makes us different? I am accounting for the how. I am not accounting for the why. Yeah. I don't have a reason necessarily for existence. Because if it was a substance that went boom, what purpose does that substance give me? Yes? Mm-hmm. Yep, you lose morality.
You have no rationale for order. Things could easily descend into chaos. In fact, you could make an argument that because of the second law of thermodynamics, entropy, that everything is falling
Yes.
into disorder.
Yep.
There's no right or wrong. There's no purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot say anyone is particularly wrong in the use of force. There are no moral boundaries.
Yes. Yes, so you said a few things there. You said, so Ann said we lose meaning. You said we lose morality. And we do, because you understand that morality, let's talk philosophically about morality for a minute, is a system of order. Morality is operational, societal, relational order. Or at least that's involved in the idea of morality. So morality brings about order. So if we came from disorder, then yeah, we have no meaning. I mean, why do I exist for any reason other than myself? And even that, it's like, how do I know I exist for myself or you? Well, I know that I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I'm gonna answer as the atheist. Well, I know that I'm supposed to do good to people. That's why we exist. Well, how and why? Because any self-respecting atheist is going to go, I think we should be good to people. I mean, the big atheists, Hitchens and Dawkins and these guys, like, they're not saying you should go around and be cruel. They're saying we believe in a system of goodness too. And we go, why and how? Because if we came from rocks that went boom, or to apply the biological logic here, if we came from apes who don't have a system of morality, then again, we're able to go back to our presuppositions and we're able to say, not only can I apply the teleological argument and say, I know where I came from, but I can also rightly say, I know why he wants me here. And you have to appeal to both. You have to appeal to both. Any truly honest atheist or agnostic or opposer of God or all of those things, you know what they really do want? What they really do want? They really do want meaning. They really do. And their view doesn't offer them that. We're worm food. So you have to give them both. You can't argue with them the logic without arriving at the compassion of God and the beauty of God and the purpose of God and what he has for us. All right. Any other questions? Any questions on the teleological argument? This is a good one. I would encourage you to keep this in your back pocket. Some of these are better than others. as in they're just more practical, I think. And I think this is a good one because we are able to arrive helpfully, I think, where we need to arrive. Usually in logic class, they tell you, or if you're writing a paper, what do they tell you? They say, start with a strong argument, sandwich your weak argument in the middle, and then, arrive at your strongest argument. I don't know why I did this in my outline, but I'm giving you my favorite argument second, okay? I don't know why, but here we go. The cosmological argument. And that is from the word that we learned recently, cosmos, which is, what's the cosmos? The universe. Yeah, the universe. What is out there? Cosmological argument. Now, I'm going to help you because we're going to use a word a good bit. Okay? That says C-O-S, cosmological, because that's obviously how you spell cosmos. But we're going to talk about the word cause, C-A-U-S-E, a good bit. Okay? So when I say cause, C-O-S, cosmological, think C-A-U-S-E as well as how it is spelled here. This is an ancient argument. Aristotle, Plato, and Aquinas. Aristotle and Plato hinted at this idea. Now, they were not like Christians, okay, but they were theists. They were polytheists. They were, they believed in mythology. And Aristotle seemed to at times talk about monotheism and at least suggest a supreme being, okay? Not Christians. Aquinas, on the other hand, was a believer, not orthodox by our standards, but he was a Christian / philosopher. We're going to come back to Aquinas later in class. The three big A's in ancient Christianity, the names you should know, Augustine, Anselm, and Aquinas. We'll talk about Aquinas and Anselm later in class. Well, Aquinas now, but Anselm later. And Augustine was obviously one of the church fathers. All right, so they hinted at this, or Aquinas applied this idea to creation. Aristotle and Plato used this idea to refer to other things, but they did also include this idea in cosmology, in how they thought about where the universe came from. The key word in cosmology is causation. Causation. Maybe you've heard about the fallacy of causation and correlation. Okay. For example, this was the most recent one. It went crazy. Well, you probably didn't see it, but it was big on Twitter, which is now X. Twitter doesn't exist anymore, but ever since our buddy Elon Musk bought it, it's now X. Okay. And it was when the Lions were playing the Packers for Thanksgiving. Now, if you're not a football person, the Lions are much better than the Packers, which hasn't happened for a long time. All right? So Lions are good this year. Packers aren't. Packers weren't having a good year and then suddenly came out of nowhere and had a good year. Lions have been having a good year. The Packers upset the Lions on Thanksgiving this year. Sorry to bring it up. Someone figured out, I don't know who figures these things out. Someone with too much time on their hands. Someone figured out that every time the Packers played the Lions and lost, we had a waning gibbous moon. Okay. Causation or correlation? Correlation is that they're related, but it's not actually affecting the game at all. The coach isn't going, all right, guys, it's a waning gibbous. We really got to give it to him tonight, right? Causation is the idea that something came because of something. Maybe you experience this in your marriage. Maybe you argue over causation a lot in your marriage. I wouldn't have said this if you hadn't. Causation. Maybe there's a legitimate cause. It's not usually helpful. Fault doesn't really matter. Fault deals in guilt. And by the way, husbands, we know we're the cause anyway, right? So, anyway, you understand this idea. Argument from, another way to say this is it's the argument from contingency. One thing is contingent upon another thing. The best illustration of this, because you can see it in your brain and it's super fun. As a kid, my grandparents played, what's that game called? Is it Mexican Train? Okay. While they played Mexican Train, I took the rest of the dominoes and did what you're supposed to do with dominoes, which is make trains and knock them over, right? You make little patterns and you make, how many of you done this? Like you take the dominoes and you do the spiral thing and how many of you went like really extreme? You made little ramps, right? And you had them go up something and down something and yeah, so question, is that exciting at all if you don't push over the first domino? No. Why? Because the entirety of that enjoyment, that whole exercise, is based on the idea of contingency. That one thing reacts to another thing or is caused by another thing. The key word is causation. It argues from contingency. One thing is contingent upon another. If I push that first domino, they all fall. Another aspect of the argument from contingency is that there are contingent things in the world. There are contingent things in the world, okay? If I go order coffee, which I do, I am caused to pay them. Why? Because we have an unwritten contingency agreement that you will give me a product and I will pay for it. That contingency exists. You might substitute the word consequences. Now, we always hear that, not always. Sometimes we only hear that as negative. But things have consequences. If I park my car too far over in the driveway and I don't tell my wife when she backs out that I parked too far over, and my wife doesn't look in the rearview mirror, she might just back into my car. Why? Because that set of circumstances created a set of contingencies, which may result in either an ideal or less than ideal. Okay? The ultimate cause, right, would be me not telling her. That's the ultimate cause. That's what did it. You get the idea. There are contingent things in the world. Not all things can be contingent. So there are contingencies, but not all things are. If all things were contingent, nothing would exist in and of itself. You say, what in the world does that mean? Just think about it this way, back to the dominoes. Draw all of those contingencies back to the first contingency. Presupposition. Not all things are contingent. Otherwise, nothing would now exist, but some things are. Since, then, we're applying, this is logic, okay? Since contingent things do exist, there must be something non-contingent or a necessary thing or being. Okay, so we're drawing contingency all the way back to its original contingency. You see what I'm doing? And we have to say, then, that original cause is not contingent. Is everyone following me? Okay. That original thing must not be contingent. He must be an independent cause. And we call this necessary thing God. Because that's who he is. Aquinas called this the prime mover, or the prime cause. He has ultimately caused everything. He is the only uncaused, to use Aquinas' term, uncaused cause. Because nothing started him. He is a completely independent being. All right, so let's do this together. Let's see why this is relevant and how this is relevant. I am an agnostic or an atheist. You are a Christian. Question for you, since you're going to ask me, we just talked about teleological argument, you're going to ask me, in the Big Bang, where did the substance that go bang, where did that come from? Since you're going to ask me that, what am I going to ask you? Where did God come from? Because you got to start with something too. To which I say, as a Christian, what? I don't have to start God at all. There was never a time when God wasn't started. God's always been. I don't have to come up with something to cause something, to cause something, to cause something, to cause something. Because my cause was never caused by anything else. He has always been. That's who God is. In his nature, he is eternal. So we actually start out on a completely different footing. You have to argue from reaction. I'm simply saying we have foundation that everything came from. Which means I have to do something on the front side, and so does that individual that maybe they're not willing to do. Concede that faith is a necessary factor. Because I believe in God on the front side, that he is the cause of all things and that nothing caused him. So I have to apply faith on the front side. And if I'm able to do that, then I'm able to account for these ideas. So the first form of the cosmological argument is the argument from contingency. There is another form of it. Before we get to the other form of it, are there any questions here? I know I just said cause a lot, but I think you see it. This is just basic logic. Any questions before we move on? Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Minds just really can't grasp that really well. So in a sense, you could almost say they reject the idea because we, in our lives, in our current observational lives, we always see things with a beginning, or we
Yeah.
take for granted there's beginnings. So it's really difficult to think about that. Even as a Christian, it's difficult to think about, well, God had no beginning, right? It's like
Yeah.
we want an anchor of something to explain things. That's difficult.
Yes. Yeah, that's, and I'm sure that's based on experience. I think you said experience has something to do with that. And maybe it's personality type. My personality type used to be like, I had to figure everything out. Like when I studied theology, I had to figure it out. Like I had to have these answers, and I had to account for it, and I had to make this make sense, and this makes sense, and this makes sense. And so maybe if that's your personality type, you're like, I can't conceive of not having a beginning. Yeah, it could trip you up. I'm probably still that personality, but I think I've just figured out like it's okay. It's okay to apply more faith in your life. Like that's not a bad thing to do, right? And to accept that God operates in different categories than we do. I think what you want to do in that circumstance, though, so if I'm over coffee with someone who really just can't get their minds around God not having a beginning, or to, even in regards to Christ, like, you know, most of the early heresies were on the origin of Christ. Or where did Jesus come from? Well, was he created? Well, that's Arianism, right? Jesus was created. We've got a problem, or he was begat from the Father a certain way that removed his either deity or diminished his humanity or something. Uh, and so that's where that idea came from. Like, we've got to figure out where Jesus came from, right? So I get what you're saying, but if I'm sitting across the table with someone that really can't get that idea, God didn't have a beginning, or Jesus, to quote the creed, there was never a time when he was not. I'm just going to say, oh, that's a great point. But personally, like, I'm really glad I've got a God who didn't have a beginning, because now automatically he's different than me. If I could answer everything about him, or if there are enough straight lines from him to me and me to him, he's not different enough for my belief. He's too much like me for me to place my hope. Does that make sense? I actually need a God outside of my categories. Yep.
I remember watching Truth Project a few times, and the person that was instructing he drew this box or this cube on the board, and this was the universe, and this was time was inside this box. God, he said, has to exist outside the box. In order for him to be a creator, he has to exist outside the box. So he's not bound by time. And that's one way of thinking of it in terms of like a
Or
pictorial.
space. Yep.
Or space, right.
Yeah.
That was an interesting, useful illustration for my small brain.
Yeah. Yeah, truly, I think most of our discontent and most of our discouragement, and even most, like we talked about this morning, most of our idolatry in life is just trying to force God into a size box that we can get. And the God of the universe isn't going to fit in a box that we make. All right. Yeah, good points. Any other questions before we move on? All right, there's one more form of this argument, and it's similar, but it leans more into the idea of causation than contingency. Okay, and this is the idea of the Kalam cosmological argument. Kalam, you say, where does that name come from? It's a philosophical term. It's a Latin philosophical term that I don't remember. Okay, I'll remember tomorrow if you really want to know. Okay, and we talked about that. We talked about this a little bit, but it's less. It leans more into the idea of the uncaused cause, and I alluded to it. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. Okay, again, we get this. This is why we fight for life. Okay, because not only do we believe the life is essential, we believe what caused that is essential. God knits in the womb, and God creates a holy process whereby that life is holy. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. My children do not put Play-Doh on a table and expect Lily's favorite thing to make is a duck. Lily loves to make ducks. I don't know why, but that's what we're doing. She doesn't put the Play-Doh on the table and expect a duck to come out. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist. The universe began to exist. Now, that's actually a pretty profound statement. That is actually a pretty profound statement. Okay? God designed the universe to be made, or God made the universe and designed it to sustain itself to a certain extent. Now, is God sovereignly, is Jesus sovereignly ruling and God sovereignly, maintaining? Yes, but God created things to operate a certain way. Maybe a good way to talk about this is, or to say this is, when my kids, my oldest don't do this as much anymore. My youngest will again. When kids talk about things being made or God creating everything, my son especially would say, because causation and creation really tripped him up, like most kids. It's a hard distinction, causation and creation. he would say, God made everything. Yes, he did, buddy. Sort of, right? Well, he made the trees. Yes. He made the original trees in the process whereby we have other trees. You know what I mean? Well, he made the air. Okay, he made everything. And then he made the workers who are over there. Like, this is Leighton in the car. Putting up the road sign. Yes. He caused them to be made. You see what I'm saying? He originated the process whereby they have a mommy and daddy. He did not, with his own hands, create them the way he made Adam and Eve. Okay? So when we think about this idea, God, in his sovereign wisdom, created and then began life to operate in an orderly way. So God is responsible for both creation and causation. Which, by the way, is a very important conversation to have with your children. Causation and creation. Maybe. But you need to help them understand the difference between God doing good things and God being responsible for bad things. And that's actually wrapped up in this conversation too, because if God is sovereignly the cause of all things, what's one of the first moral questions you're going to come up with? Where does sin come from? I mean, Everly's asked me, why didn't God just kill Satan? It's a good question. It's a good question. It seems like he should have. He definitely deserved it. Well, we'll get to that question later in class. But this is an important idea that God created things to operate a certain way. God is responsible for both creation and causation. The universe must have a cause. This is, okay, so now we're just building a logical foundation. The universe exists for something. And the universe exists because of something, by something. Not only does it exist how, God, it exists why. What does it do? Well, it's the same thing, it's the same reason you and I exist. The heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament shows his handiwork. Psalm 8, when I consider the work of your hands, the sun, moon, and stars. So everything by extension that God has both created and caused exists for his glory. You and I notwithstanding. You and I primarily created for his glory. The universe must have a cause. And this is astounding. Like I don't want to allow the glory of this to escape us, okay? Because humans have made some pretty astounding things. I mean, that's true. Like humans have made some pretty astounding things. I love that line in National Treasure. How many of you like to see National Treasure? Okay, that line, National Treasure. Riley's the best in that movie. I mean, you watch the movie for Riley, right? And they're down in the bottom, and they're finally in the the cavern with where the treasure's supposed to be, and somebody says, maybe it's Nick Cage's character, I don't know. Somebody says, it's astounding that they made stuff like this, and Riley goes, yeah, the aliens helped them, right? Have you ever thought like the pyramids are incredible? The pyramids would be a feat architecturally now, much less when they didn't have technology. The Great Wall of China is astounding. Over 1,000 miles of wall through mountains and hills and snow. It's incredible. Humans have made some pretty astounding things. Humans have caused and by their own hands created some incredible things. But the idea that the universe began to exist and God created it is truly an incomprehensible, inexplicable reality. I mean, that's outside our words and our understanding. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And after that long poetic description of the order and sequence of creation, I love what the writer says when he talks about the cosmos. And he made the greater light and the lesser light, and he made the stars also. Oh, by the way, he sprinkled a few stars out there. Our planet, our planet in comparison to Jupiter, did you know the red spot on Jupiter, has the width to fit 5 Earths? The spot has the width to fit 5 of our planet. People estimate that Jupiter, put up against the star Betelgeuse, would look like a mini dwarf star. And he made the stars also. The universe must have had a cause. The attributes necessary for causing the causing existence must be unique to that cause. In other words, the prime mover or the uncaused cause must have abilities and wisdom that you and I don't. He must be able to accomplish and create things you and I can't accomplish and create. In order to operate outside of space and time, you must be outside of space and time. In order to have divine wisdom to create a universe that functions in order and contributes to life, you must be an ultimately orderly being yourself. Do you know why I had to fix the footboard on my son's bed? Because I am not an ultimately orderly being. Do you know why you get to the end of IKEA furniture sometimes and have a part and a shelf left over? Because you made a mistake on page, 13 when you didn't read the Swiss right or whatever. We're not ultimately orderly beings. We do not have the capacity, no matter how hard we try, to create perfection. At least perfectly. And that really bothers us sometimes. Really frustrates us sometimes. We all have our thing to which we hold ourselves to a standard. That anything short of that standard, it's going to really bum out the rest of our day. God knows our frame and knows that we're dust. Maybe we should be a little more understanding of ourselves. Because we do not have attributes unique to the Father in every way. Now, obviously, there's communicable attributes and there's uncommunicable attributes. The communicable ones are the ones you share with you: love, holiness, grace. The incommunicable ones: eternality, omnipotence, omnipresence. We're doing maybe I said this, we're doing the omnis right now with our kids. And the way that Leighton remembers omnipotent is a hippo tent. I don't know why, but he pictures this tent, this hippo inside a tent, and that makes him think of something strong. A hippo tent. You'll never forget it now. We don't have the attributes necessary. But God has given us what is necessary to believe and to hope. All right, that means that which was caused is subservient to that cause, or submissive, or under. That means that which was caused is subservient to that cause. What does that mean? To put it another way, very simply, there is a natural pecking order. There's a natural order. And again, I think we kind of know this instinctively too. And I think atheists and agnostics know this instinctively too. Do you know why I know that? It's because that final point is the one to which they most passionately disagree. Why? Because it maintains accountability. It means I have a master. that means that which is cause is subservient to the cause. Why do I glorify God? Because literally I was created to. But even if I wasn't created for that purpose, in other words, if God didn't intrinsically place within me the knowledge that I'm made for something bigger, I serve something bigger, I know something bigger, I live outside myself, I would owe that to him because he's a glorious being. Humanity owes God worship because he's just who he is. We give him our time because he's outside of time. We give him our minds and our hearts because he has a perfect mind and heart. We operate for him because he's made things, period. And who he is, which enables him, who he is, which enables him to make things the way that he has made them, causes a natural order where he is supreme and I am subservient. So now we're back, and now we're done, back to our basic presuppositional apologetics. Whether we're talking the idea of design, teleological, or the idea of contingency, argument from contingency, or the Kalam cosmological argument, what is unified in all of these things? The how and the why. And the how allows me to know that my faith is reasonable. It makes sense. Like Christianity actually does make sense. And we have answers for the deepest questions of our soul. And the why. I know I am here. And it's not easy, but it's actually pretty joyous. I'm here to exist outside myself. And when I do this the way God has caused me to do it, he gives me joy in living. And God, in his infinite wisdom, has created us in such a way that when we live out our purpose and our glory, he unites our joy with that purpose. In other words, God has answered the human's deepest desire for meaning by creating us with this specific purpose of bringing him glory. He's married our desire for meaning and his desire for glory. And when we live like we're supposed to, we live with joy. Would you pray with me? Father, we thank you so much for your grace and your kindness. Help us to